But the vision of peace, the primary thing that comes out of this foundation is it says the vision of peace is to help every member to become on mission, doing what Jesus did and taught. Every member on mission. I remember I was talking to a gal who had just been asked by her local church to be the mission leader for the church, and she was highly educated, especially in the world of mission. And she came in and thought, I'm going to tackle this, and she immediately felt like, I don't know what to do, though. So she called me and said, what do I do? And I remember stopping and just asking her one question. I said, what is the first step you would take? And she said, I don't even know the first step. What's the first step? And I said, okay, let me just give you this one phrase, and you call me back in a week. And she said, okay, what is it? And I said, it's every member on mission. That the vision is every member on mission. Call me back in a week. So sure enough, we talked about a week later, and I remember picking up the phone, and she told me who she was, and I said, so how's it going? And she shouted out, it changes everything. I said, I know. She goes, no. It changes everything. I said, tell me why it changes everything. And as she began to explain it, I said, you know what? You got it. You really have it. Because every member on mission, first of all, assumes that people are growing in their faith. And as they grow into a point of already serving in the body, and they see people in the world that are suffering and hurting and in pain and isolation and depression, they realize that the biblical community they're in is getting healthy. And wouldn't it be great to introduce them to a Savior, a deliverer, someone who can set them free and bring them into a biblical community where they can get healthy too? And that if every member is in a healthy disciple-making process and have a heart out of gratitude to God to go into the community, and they start going, what that changes in the community. And she said, exactly, it changes everything. It really does. The vision drives everything else. The vision of every member on mission, and what that means, what it takes to help every member on mission, and then what that does when they begin to go live on mission because they love God, because they love others, and this is what God has set them out to do. Now we see in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where we do mission. Because not only do we know that mission is for everyone, but where do we do it? And it says in Acts 1:8, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Did you know that every church is a sending church? Every church should be a sending church because every member in every church should be living on mission. And so what we did when we started the peace plan was we looked at Acts chapter 1:8 and said, okay, let's take the various aspects of Acts 1:8 and let's make it 3 different parts of doing peace so that our members can easily step in and get started. So first of all, we looked in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, and saw that they're going to be witnesses, first of all, in their Jerusalem. Right where they live, right where they're at, the people around them, their family, their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers, their classmates, people they run into on a regular basis, that in your Jerusalem is about developing a lifestyle of caring about people that are already in your life, developing a lifestyle. It's what you personally do. It's not a program. It's not something that gets funded. It's not something that requires a team of people to do. That we have a personal responsibility to care for the people that God brings into our life. In fact, it's so serious that in Matthew chapter 25, I read this verse earlier in 37 to 40, it says that when you're confronted with someone who needs food or water or clothes or a prisoner that you know that's imprisoned, and if you don't respond to that, maybe you don't even have a saving faith. Because in this passage in Matthew chapter 25, the goats are separated from the sheep. And so that's not about how you get salvation, but it's about whether you have a saving faith. Do you really care about the people that God's put in your life? And that's one of the hardest things to do, because that's thinking about, I've got to call that family member. I've got to get back in contact with that friend. I need to say something to a coworker. I need to begin loving on a classmate or just someone I meet as I'm going along. So this is a powerful part of getting started in peace, is the personal responsibility. And we teach this in class 401. How do you get started? How do you learn what the good news is so you can articulate it? How do you learn your story so you can tell your story and help people begin to take that step into a saving faith? Then we took a look at the part of Acts chapter 1:8, Judea and Samaria, and said that's local. That's kind of the city, county, that you live in. Some people take it out as far as their country. And then Samaria, the Samaritans were people of a different culture that lived among them. Do you have people in your community that are of a different culture? Probably. Across the world, it's becoming more and more diverse. It's becoming beautiful and an opportunity for people of different backgrounds to connect. But that became for us what we called local peace. It's where people say, we need to step into our community, into our city, into our county, into our state, our province. And we need to pay particular attention also to people that are from a different culture, a different background, a different language, and begin to love on them. It's where we begin to form teams of people that have a particular passion, and we go out and begin to do local peace. So that came out of Judea and Samaria. And then we saw in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, the ends of the earth. And we call this global peace. This is where we go to the ends of the earth. We go anywhere and everywhere that God's called us to go, especially to places that don't yet have a church. And so personal peace, local peace, and global peace became the three aspects of the peace plan that we help our members get started stepping into. Now notice it says Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. It's not optional. It's not Jerusalem and then Judea and Samaria and then the ends of the earth. It's and. And so we'll explain this later on as we get into both transformation and expansion, how that works. But we actually have our members focused on all three. Now you see on the next page, it talks about a pathway for church members to get started in peace. So for a lot of our members, they're like, how do I get started? Where do I start? And so here's what we tell them. First of all, get ready. And what we mean by get ready is get in. So we want to make sure before people get started that they know God personally, that they can belong or join the church and get baptized and take class 101. That's our first class that helps people hear about salvation and baptism and how to be committed to a church, a body of Christ, and then they make that commitment. And then the second thing we tell them is get healthy. We want them to be able to join a small group, to be able to take class 201s, to start to grow in their spiritual disciplines, prayer, studying the Bible, tithing, and just other spiritual disciplines. And as they're getting healthy, they can take the next step, which is to get strong. Get in, get healthy, get strong. Serve in the church. We get stronger when we serve, when we start to do things for other people, especially starting off in the church, meeting the needs of people in the church. And we ask them to take class 301 where they can learn to discover their shape. And of course, we put a lot of things in acrostics around here. So shape is spiritual gifts, heart passions, abilities, personality, experiences, that together, those are our unique shape, the way that God wired us. And that's typically how we find that place to serve in the church. And once people have come through those steps, then they're ready to get started in peace. And we ask them to start with doing personal peace. And we start them off in taking class 401, where they learn about God's mission in the world, how they're uniquely shaped, how they can hear what the gospel is and articulate the gospel for others, and then how to tell their story. And they learn that in class 401. And we say, first of all, just start living this out in your Jerusalem, in your community, with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your classmates, and people that you run into all the time. Everyday encounters, acts of kindness. You hear a lot of people saying, well, I do acts of kindness. That's awesome. That's part of personal peace. That's not all we can do. We can do a lot more than that, but that's something we should be doing. It's something we should care about. And then finally, to serve in something your church might have, which is a place where you bring food. You might have a food pantry, or people come by and they can pick up clothes or shoes or something like that. Those are all opportunities to get started with personal peace. And so that's getting started. As people are started, we say, now you can get together. So now you've stepped into peace, you're doing it personally, and to get started, we want you to do the rest of this mission together, on mission together. So we want you to match your peace shape, your mission shape, the thing that God has put on your heart, with a peace work. And so we're going to talk about your peace shape in the next step called mobilization. How do you find and discover what God's put on your heart? And then how do you go into the community and do those things? How do you do a good work, or we call it a peace work? And first of all, as you discover your peace shapes, it's usually going to come through crawl steps, just simple things that you do that don't take training, don't take money, don't take a lot of time, until you discover your shape, and then you connect to other people that have a common shape. So we get people ready, we get them started, we get them together, so now they're connected to people with a common passion, and then we say get going. Once they're connected, they can get started in local peace through your local church by praying together. It's important to begin to start everything off with prayer, not as something that's just routine, but actually something that asks God to direct us, asks God to open doors where we go, asks God to connect us with people whose hearts are ready, people who are suffering and in pain that we can come alongside of and love on and try to help them through that. And then we look for a person of peace. We'll get into this when we get down to step 3 and going into the community, but you're looking for a person of peace who opens the door and says, please come in. We welcome you. We're so glad you're here. And then again, doing peace work in teams and peace areas, how you identify a place that you go to. And then there's also global peace. So people are getting going in global peace, which is church to church, again, praying, finding a person of peace, partnering with churches where we go, and then again, matching peace works in peace areas. So this is the process we use to get people into the peace plan. We're going to come back to this a little bit later. But for now, I want you to stop and turn to the person next to you again. And I want you to talk about something that I think is important in this whole thing, which is the healthy church process. Now, we're not expecting you, if you're not the senior pastor of a church, to change your church or to even go and recommend it. We're really asking you to step into a healthy church process in your church. And most of all, as a leader for your church in the area of mission and peace, I want you to talk about this whole idea of every member on mission. How do you be a part of your church's disciple-making process to be able to take people who are ready to live on mission and be able to identify them and then help them take their first steps into mission? So turn to each other and have that conversation, and then we'll come back together.